Hello everyone. In this little video I'm just going to show you the sample solution for one of the exercises in the practice exam for FIT 9135, because we didn't have a lot of time to go through this kind of exercise in the tutorials, and to help you prepare for the final exam I thought it's a good idea to give you a little bit of a step-by-step instruction for that. So here's the question. We've got a network with 3 separate LANs in the 3 buildings. Building A and B have a router each, while building C is connected directly to the backbone network. And then there's another router that connects the entire network to the internet. We're also given a table with the MAC and IP addresses for each of the interfaces. And the first 2 questions are just about the backbone network, and I hope you can figure them out on your own. You can also look at the sample solution. What I want to focus on here is this question. Basically what we want to do here is a manual version of running Wireshark. Okay, so first of all, read the question very carefully. In this particular instance, what we're asked to do is to list all the frames between all of the devices that are required to establish a telnet connection between clients 2 and 6. All right? So a telnet connection between 2 and 6. We have to list all the frames that are required to establish the connection. So let's have a look at the network again. All right, so client 2 is in building A, client 6 is in building B. So how are the frames going to travel? So this is the path that the packet or frame needs to travel. From client 2, we go to interface E0 of router 1, and then the packet leaves the router on interface E1 and goes to interface E1 of router 2, and then it leaves router 2 on E0 and enters client 6. We can also look at the same path in the address table. So again, from client 2 we go to E0 of router 1, from E1 of router 1 we go to E1 of router 2, from E0 of router 2 we go to client 6. All right, now this is the first step. Right? We have to send a packet from client 2 to client 6. Now, the question was about establishing a connection. Now, remember, a TCP connection is established using a 3-way handshake. So let's have a look at the 3-way handshake in a table, a bit like what you see in Wireshark. All right, the first step was to go from client 2 to router 1. So the layer 2 source, that's the hardware address or MAC address, is 3, right? If you look at the MAC address of client 2, it ends in 03, and you only have to give the last byte, so the last 2 digits here. The destination address is 96 or 96 hexadecimal. So that's the MAC address of interface E0 of router 1. The layer 3 source, that's the network address, the IP address. Well, the source address is 42. That's the address of client 2. The destination address at the network layer is 26. It's the address of client 6. Okay, this is an important distinction here. At the data link layer, we always address a packet to the next step, so to the next router or maybe to the final destination if that's already in our network. At the network layer, however, we always address it to the final destination. Now, the transport layer contents of the packet is just a TCP SYN. Right? That's the first step of establishing a connection. Okay, let's look at the second step. So we have to go from E1 of router 1 to E1 of router 2. Again, the same thing. Well, we're leaving router 1 on E1, which has the MAC address 02, and we're entering router 2 on interface E1, which has the MAC address D2. The layer 3 addresses remain the same, because we're still sending a packet from the original source, client 2, to the original destination, client 6. Okay, and again, this is just the TCP SYN packet that's now being sent from router 1 to router 2. And then finally, we can deliver that packet to the destination, to client 6, via interface E0 of router 2. So that goes from MAC address 01 to MAC address B0, so from router 2 to client 6. And again, the network layer addresses, the IP addresses stay the same. It's 42 and 26. And this, again, is the TCP SYN packet. So now we've delivered the SYN packet, the first part of the three-way handshake, from the client 2 to client 6. Now the next step of the three-way handshake is to send a SYN ACK packet back from the server, in this case from the client 6. So what that means is that we basically go in reverse. So now we go from MAC address B0 to 01, so from client 6 to router 2. The network layer addresses are also reversed, so from IP address 26 to IP address 42, and it's a SYN ACK packet. And we reverse the next step as well, D2 to 02, but still it's 26 to 42, TCP SYN ACK, and then 96 to 03, 26, 42, TCP SYN ACK. So now we've delivered the SYN ACK, the second phase of the three-way handshake, from client 6 to client 2. And since it's a three-way handshake, there's one more step missing, which is the ACK packet flowing back from client 2 to client 6. So this looks pretty much exactly like the first three, except that it's now a TCP ACK instead of a TCP SYN. All right, so this is basically the table that you were supposed to create for this task. The important things to note here are that the layer 2 destination address is always the next hop, so the next router, or the final destination if it's in your network, while the layer 3 source and destination addresses are really the original source and destination address at the network layer. In the actual final exam, of course, we won't give you exactly this question, right? So we will have something there that will look very similar, but of course not exactly the same. So for example, the network structure might look a bit different. The addresses will be definitely different. And you may be asked to, for example, not establish a connection between two of the devices, but to close a connection or to send a message to a device and then send a response back to the original device. Something like that. So the important thing is to read the specification very carefully so you know exactly what we ask you to do, and to have a look at the actual network very carefully. Don't assume it's the same one that you saw in the sample exam. Right? So this is just to give you an idea what kind of question we might ask you in the final exam. It's definitely not going to be exactly the same. Because we had people in the past just remembering exactly the numbers and putting them into the final exam. So I can guarantee you that that will give you exactly 0 marks in the final exam. All right, I hope you find this a bit helpful. Good luck with your exam preparations.